The First World War was a catastrophe that shook the very foundations of civilization. The scale of the conflict was unprecedented, involving nations from across the globe and resulting in unimaginable destruction. The war introduced new forms of warfare, including trench warfare and chemical weapons, which caused immense suffering and loss of life. Millions perished in a senseless bloodbath, leaving nations devastated and societies scarred. The war left behind a legacy of grief and trauma, with countless families mourning the loss of loved ones. Entire cities and towns were reduced to rubble, and the economic impact was felt for years to come. From the ashes of this global conflict, a glimmer of hope emerged: the League of Nations. This new international organization was envisioned as a way to prevent such a devastating conflict from ever happening again. It represented a collective desire for peace and stability in a world that had been torn apart by war. Conceived by US President Woodrow Wilson, the League aimed to prevent future wars through international cooperation and collective security. Wilson's vision was one of diplomacy and dialogue, where nations could resolve their differences without resorting to violence. His efforts were instrumental in the creation of the League, and he became a symbol of hope for a war-weary world. It was a noble experiment, a testament to humanity's yearning for lasting peace. The League brought together representatives from around the world, fostering a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. Delegates worked tirelessly to address the many challenges facing the international community, from border disputes to humanitarian crises. The League's covenant, enshrined in the Treaty of Versailles, outlined its ambitious goals: to settle international disputes peacefully, to encourage disarmament, and to promote social and economic progress. The Treaty of Versailles was a landmark document that sought to lay the groundwork for a more stable and just world order, and to improve global well-being. The League of Nations also focused on issues such as health, labor rights, and the protection of minorities. It established various agencies and commissions to tackle these problems, demonstrating a comprehensive approach to building a better world. Member states pledged to respect each other's territorial integrity and to come to the aid of any member threatened with aggression. This principle of collective security was central to the League's mission, as it sought to create a system where an attack on one member would be considered an attack on all. For a world weary of war, the League offered a beacon of hope, a promise of a more peaceful and just future. Though it faced many challenges and criticisms, the League of Nations laid the foundation for future international cooperation and the eventual creation of the United Nations. Its legacy endures as a reminder of the enduring human aspiration for peace and unity. From its inception, the League of Nations was plagued by structural weaknesses that ultimately hampered its ability to fulfill its mandate. Established in the aftermath of World War I, the League was envisioned as a global body that would prevent future conflicts and foster international cooperation. However, the lofty ideals behind its creation were soon overshadowed by practical challenges and political realities. One glaring flaw was the absence of several key players, most notably the United States. Despite President Woodrow Wilson's pivotal role in conceptualizing the League, the US Senate, driven by isolationist sentiments and a desire to avoid foreign entanglements, refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles. This decision was influenced by a complex mix of political, ideological, and economic factors. Senators were concerned about the potential loss of US sovereignty and the possibility of being drawn into European conflicts. As a result, the United States, despite being the League's chief architect, never joined the organization it had helped create. This absence dealt a severe blow to the League's credibility and influence from the outset. Without the participation of one of the world's most powerful nations, the League struggled to assert its authority and legitimacy on the global stage. The organization also suffered from a lack of effective enforcement power. While the League's covenant outlined ambitious goals for maintaining peace and security, it lacked the necessary mechanisms to enforce its resolutions. The League's covenant relied heavily on moral persuasion and economic sanctions, lacking a standing military force to enforce its decisions. This reliance on non-military measures was intended to promote peaceful resolution of conflicts, but it often proved inadequate in the face of aggressive actions by member states. This reliance on collective action proved to be a fatal flaw, as member states were often reluctant to act decisively against aggressor nations, particularly when their own interests were not directly threatened. The League's inability to respond effectively to crises such as the Japanese invasion of Manchuria and the Italian invasion of Ethiopia highlighted its limitations and ultimately contributed to its decline. Despite its structural shortcomings, the League of Nations achieved some notable successes in its early years, particularly in the realm of humanitarian aid and social progress. Established in the aftermath of World War I, the League was envisioned as a platform for resolving international disputes and fostering global cooperation. Its early efforts were marked by a series of initiatives aimed at improving living conditions and addressing urgent social issues. For instance, the League's health organization played a pivotal role in combating diseases such as malaria and tuberculosis, which were rampant in many parts of the world at the time. Additionally, the League's efforts in promoting child welfare and addressing the plight of refugees were commendable. The League played a crucial role in resettling refugees, combating disease outbreaks, and providing relief to war-torn regions. Its Refugee Commission, led by Fridtjof Nansen, was instrumental in helping displaced persons find new homes and rebuild their lives. The League also launched campaigns to control the spread of infectious diseases, which were a major threat to public health in the post-war period. These efforts not only saved countless lives, but also helped to stabilize regions that had been devastated by conflict, and promoting international cooperation on labor standards and drug trafficking. The League's International Labour Organization, ILO, worked tirelessly to improve working conditions and protect workers' rights across the globe. It set standards for fair wages, working hours, and safety regulations, which were adopted by many countries. The League also took a strong stance against drug trafficking, launching initiatives to curb the illegal trade of narcotics and promote public health. However, the League's ability to maintain peace and security was increasingly called into question as it faced a series of challenges in the 1920s. Despite its noble intentions, the League struggled to enforce its resolutions and lacked the military power to back its decisions. This weakness became apparent as tensions rose in various parts of the world. The League's inability to prevent conflicts and its failure to act decisively in critical situations undermined its credibility and effectiveness. Border disputes and minor conflicts erupted across Europe, testing the League's ability to resolve conflicts peacefully. The League's mediation efforts were often hampered by the reluctance of member states to commit to collective action. In many cases, national interests took precedence over international cooperation, leading to a lack of consensus and ineffective interventions. The League's limited success in resolving these disputes highlighted the challenges of achieving lasting peace through diplomacy alone. While the League managed to mediate some of these disputes, its overall impact was limited. Successful resolutions were often the result of bilateral agreements rather than League-led initiatives. The League's role in these negotiations was more of a facilitator than a decisive actor. This limited influence was a reflection of the broader geopolitical dynamics of the time, where major powers were reluctant to cede authority to an international body. Its lack of decisive action in the face of more aggressive actions by certain powers set a dangerous precedent. The League's failure to address the aggressive policies of countries like Japan and Italy in the 1930s would later contribute to the outbreak of World War II. The inability to enforce collective security measures and the absence of a unified response to aggression revealed the inherent weaknesses of the League's structure. These challenges underscored the need for a more robust and effective system of international governance, which would eventually lead to the establishment of the United Nations after the Second World War. Section 4. The Manchurian Crisis, a defining failure. The League of Nations faced its first major test in 1931 when Japan, driven by imperial ambitions, invaded Manchuria, a resource-rich region in northeastern China. The League condemned Japan's aggression, but its response was hesitant and ultimately ineffective. Member states were reluctant to impose economic sanctions on Japan, fearing economic repercussions and further instability in the region. Japan, emboldened by the League's weak response, withdrew from the organization in 1933, demonstrating the League's inability to enforce its decisions and deter aggression. The Manchurian crisis exposed the League's impotence on the world stage and emboldened other aggressor nations, signaling that the international order was unraveling. Section 5, the Abyssinian debacle, another blow to credibility. The League's credibility suffered another severe blow in 1935 when Italy, under the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini, invaded Abyssinia, present-day Ethiopia. Despite Ethiopia's pleas for help and the League's condemnation of Italy's actions, the organization proved unable to muster a united front against Mussolini's aggression. Some member states, fearing a wider European conflict, were reluctant to impose tough sanctions on Italy, while others, motivated by self-interest, even supplied Italy with arms. The League's failure to protect Ethiopia, a founding member, further eroded its authority and emboldened other dictatorial regimes, signaling that the post-World War I order was crumbling.